Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Brandon Bornancin, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I am humbled, grateful, honored, and thrilled to have with me Mr. Barsi. Ralph Barsi is the global sales development leader at ServiceNow. I've gone to 50 different sales events where this guy is on stage talking about the world's best sales development secrets, strategies, best practices. Prior to ServiceNow, he was leading vice president of field operations and sales development at Achievers. He was doing sales at Inside View. You know, Ralph, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Really appreciate you.
It's my pleasure, Brandon. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great now that we finally got you locked in. This was like 2 months of planning. This guy is so busy trying to hit his massive numbers. It was hard to lock Ralph in, but we're thrilled to have you today. The audience is dying to know a few things, man. You're everywhere in sales development. You're an expert. You're sharing all these strategies, tips, best practices. You're speaking all over the world. I'd love to just take a step back for the audience. Like, who is Ralph Barsi? Where did you come from? What's your background, family? Like, how did you get started in sales?
Wow. That's a big one. Who am I? I'm Ralph Barsi. I am a father and a husband, probably first. I married my college sweetheart close to 23 years ago.
Oh my gosh! Congrats, by the way. I'm engaged to my college sweetheart, so I
love it. Congratulations!
That's incredible.
I have 3 beautiful boys. One of them is already in college, and my youngest is going into high school in the fall next year. So with respect to sales, I feel like I've been in sales my whole life. I was that kid who had a paper route, and not only would I fold and then stuff the bag full of newspapers and get on my BMX bike and truck through the neighborhood throwing papers, but I had to go collect checks from everybody every month for their newspaper subscription. And
wow, you were doing sales and accounts receivable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. So
that's awesome.
So I'm embarking on my 25th year as a professional salesperson. I've had the pleasure of spending the first half of my career as an individual contributor. I have carried a bag. I've overseen territories. I've collected nice commission checks, et cetera. But on the flip side, the latter half of my career has really been invested in building and scaling teams, both of individual contributors, but mostly of sales development reps who were relatively early in their careers. So the whole craft of coaching and teaching and mentoring and developing and nurturing our future salespeople means a lot to me. I think ultimately, the better they do in their careers, they're going to be representing you, Brandon, everybody who's listening and watching us talk today. They're all in our beloved profession of sales. And, we want gems going into our profession to represent us for generations to come. And that I take that to heart. That's all. So that's in a nutshell who I am and what my whole story with sales is about.
Yeah, that's incredible. So when you were doing the paper route, and then obviously obviously graduated from college with your college sweetheart.
Yep.
Where was the first place professionally that you sold for?
Very first place I sold for professionally was United Parcel Service.
UPS.
I worked for UPS for close to 6 years, started out as a paid intern for them, and learned all about logistics and supply chain management. I then moved into...
Was your girlfriend probably at the time, or maybe she was your wife, was she jacked that you were going to work for United Parcel Services?
Absolutely. It's a great company.
Yeah.
It is to this day.
Their training program, I heard, is amazing.
On fire. They've been buttoned up from the start. They have very high standards of their people, and especially of their leaders and managers. And it was a real privilege to get onboarded, I guess, to sales from the folks at UPS. I became an individual contributor there and was a key account executive and sold international services and freight forwarding services for them for several years, and really provided a great framework and foundation for me to launch my career from.
And was that like were you cold calling into B2B companies to manage all of their like shipping needs, or what was that like?
So that cold calling was comprised of, the green bar papers that we would have to print out on the major printer. And we would have to draw a line through, the numbers that we called with a little scribble scratch note of what the call included. And then the second piece of the cold calling was literally going to the back doors where a lot of the logistics leaders worked, and go through the roll-up door and climb up on the loading dock and begin your pitch. Start talking about the business issues that you're seeing in other like businesses in the neighborhood. And
so it was like in-person pitching.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, this wasn't like telesales. This was in-person cold.
That first part with the green bar paper, that was on the phone. But you're essentially your own SDR, and you're booking your own meeting to then go have with the prospects.
The full service salesperson.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Which aligned with your paper route because you were doing sales and collectibles.
And it's important. Okay. It's important for those listening who've not had that experience in their career. You have to live and understand and comprehend the sales life cycle and all the mechanics of every component within the life cycle from soup to nuts. Otherwise, you're an SDR thinking you're ready to be an AE, for example, and you really don't fully understand all the nuts and bolts of a stage 4, 5, 6 opportunity and beyond.
Yeah, that's great advice. I know at Seamless.ai here, all of my SDRs are so hungry. They're like a few months in and they're already like dying to go into AE. I'm like, man, we've got a long way to go. We're like, we can't wait to promote you, but we got a few things we got to do to check off those boxes.
Yeah, for sure. Now that ambition and confidence and energy is like, that's why they were hired in the first place. I don't want them to lose that.
Absolutely.
But I also want them to be really self-aware that there's a lot to learn, and it's the long game that we are playing here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you were at UPS for how long? Like, were you there for a while?
It was just about 6 years. It was in the early to mid 90s.
What was the biggest, if you had to look back, last year to when you were at UPS? What was the biggest success that you had there, and then the biggest failure or learning opportunity?
The biggest success I had there, probably landing some big accounts that we've been trying to penetrate for some time, and being able to get the foot in the door and get the conversation started. But that conversation manifesting itself into a signed agreement, there's no greater feeling. Yeah. Some of the failures. Probably sloppiness in terms of how I communicated and corresponded with some of the prospects I was working with. They were high-level executives in their respective organizations, and we didn't have email at the time, and I was doing probably sloppy handwritten notes, not necessarily penmanship-wise, but my choice of words. I may have been using too many words. I would talk way too much like I am now on the phone, rather than just pause for a minute, let them digest, process what's being asked of them, and let them reply in kind. Stuff like that, like little rough around the edges things, I think would sum up my failures there.
And that's just from like being newer to sales, right? You kind of develop that as you go throughout your career.
It's also correct, Brandon, but it's also probably a little bit of cockiness that wasn't warranted, where I thought I knew what was up, and I really didn't. Especially now in retrospect, 25 years later, it's like, whoa, I was all ego at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting how the ego, my first company did millions when I was 18, and then my second company 3 years later lost millions, and I got my ass kicked. Yeah, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was doing the same thing. I was just thought I knew everything as an entrepreneur, and I know nothing now. Yeah. That's awesome. So after the UPS thing, after that great career, you learn a lot. One, you got to tame the ego. Two, you got to work on your message and have a concise, value-driven message, and then just the success was winning those big accounts. Where did you what was next in your career after that?
So it was mid to late 1999 when I was on the tail end of my time at UPS. And during that time, the dot-com era was in full swing and I wanted in. So I bought my first laptop. I kind of figured out what email was all about and how to leverage it and how to use the internet. And I left UPS amicably and went to work for a .com company. I worked for citysearch.com, which was at the time owned by Ticketmaster.
Yep, City Search, I remember.
It's probably today's Yelp as we know it, but back in the day, there were, cities that needed to have an internet presence. And if you were flying to Miami, for example, you might want to know, well, what hotels do I stay at in Miami and restaurants? And where do I go see live music and go walk in the park? Well, citysearch.com/Miami would tell you all that information. So I was responsible for selling websites to businesses who did not yet have an online presence. They were in the yellow pages. They were doing print ads, and they weren't acquainted at all with the power of online advertising or brand. And so that was part of my pitch at that point.
Yeah, that's awesome. See, it sounds very much like the Yelp.
Yeah, it is. It's like the first iteration of Yelp. And so that was an interesting experience as well, because that too required door-to-door in-person meetings. And it wasn't even pick up the phone and do a preemptive call like, hey, Brandon, I'm going to be stopping by your shop next Wednesday at 10. All of a sudden I was there and I was on. And, picking up from what were the successes and failures question, some failures were, I was literally walked out of the stores that I was pitching to. The proprietor of the store would literally walk me out onto the sidewalk and just tell me to take a hike. It was brutal.
And so why couldn't you guys sell City Search over the phone? Was it just like you had the deal would go down much faster if you were there in person, you think? Or
so it's not that we couldn't sell it over the phone. We absolutely could. But if you had a neighborhood or a territory that you owned, sometimes you had to literally pick up the bag and get into the neighborhood and meet with the people in order to expedite the sales process altogether. Enough of the calling, you just have to go literally show up and add value right out of the gate. And you want to talk about a humbling experience, but you also learn how to get super sharp in conversation flow and being articulate with your beginning, middle, and end, and what it is you want to get out of this 5 minutes or 30 seconds that you have with these prospects. It's just invaluable experience that I draw from today.
Yeah, the in-person, that's why I love talking to door-to-door salespeople like yourself, because, if you're scared to pick up the phone, go knocking doors and let me know how that goes.
Yep.
How did you, so you did the City Search, you're doing door-to-door B2B sales again.
Yep.
Kind of similar to the UPS routes, but this is different. This is new .com, internet local search, essentially. I know it was a lot of pay for performance marketing, I think, with that online city guide. How did you master do you have any feedback or strategy around the door-to-door sales? Did you get your door, after 1,000 doors got slammed on you, you then figured out that this one type of opener, I don't know, how did you learn to be successful doing door-to-door?
It's really sales 101 fundamental stuff. I call it the bounce pass or the chest pass. It's the basics. And you have to cut your teeth in experiences like that to realize, okay, wait a minute, maybe I need to pause tonight after today's harrowing experiences going door-to-door, and maybe I need to write down 10 conversation starters. And those conversation starters might include open-ended questions about the market or business that they're in. Maybe I need to learn more about the restaurant business, or maybe I need to learn more about the brick and mortar space being that I'm immersing myself in this new online thing. Let me figure out how people run a brick and mortar business successfully and what might be important to everybody. What are the common denominators that I can then inform my conversation starters with? And then it's basic stuff like Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. Look people in the eyes, tell them what your name is, find out what their name is, Brandon, and then call them by that first name, because to human beings, that's the sweetest sound to their ears is their first name. So just pick up on, fundamental, foundational human behavior traits and talk to the people.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Like it sounds like you kind of did account-based persona research, like trying to figure out what are their pain points, what do they like, what do they dislike, what do they need to grow their business. And then when you show up the next day at whatever business, you've got all the data and the strategies so that you can pitch and connect with these people.
I may cut out an ad that they posted in the yellow pages, and I walk in showing them the ad like, hey, this is a great ad. However, it's only reaching a small percentage of the audience that you're trying to resonate with.
Oh, so that's a good one.
If you then take it online, your reach goes 5x or 10x. And let me show you how these 5 restaurants down the street have done it and the return that they're already seeing. I'm sure this is something that interests you. And if it's not today, perhaps it's Thursday, or perhaps it's at this time next month. But I want to make sure that, we have a seat at the table when you come to evaluate that.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I sold mobile media to businesses, kind of like my second company, the InMobile, was doing the ads, but via text message, kind of like City Search. Yeah. I got crushed there. What was so the biggest success and failure you think from, because you were going UPS and then you went .com and you went internet route. Like what was the biggest takeaways, success and failure from that experience selling?
Successes were that I did it. The fact that I literally set foot into so many different businesses in such a short period of time that I got my rap down, and I got my self-confidence up. My ego took a back seat. It was a really humbling experience in those successes. The failures were lack of knowledge of the markets that I was selling to, lack of preparation, where the rookie salesperson that's walking the streets like that, going door to door, a lot of them aren't preparing. They're just walking in, going on their good graces and thinking that their charm and their wit is going to move the needle, when that's hardly the case. You need to have your act together and have a very clear understanding of what critical business issues these merchants might be experiencing, or businesses, no matter how you want to look at it, and be able to articulate solutions that are going to solve those critical business issues, lead with market data, stuff like that. Those were failures of mine. Those are just misses and gaps. And there's no one to blame other than me for not, getting it together and really understanding what I was talking about before I started barging in on people.
Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of take the challenger sale approach, but even to just walking into Joe's Deli, selling deli sandwiches, like, you're like, man, we should have got more ads. We should have done more research. Who are they trying to target? How are they doing it? It sounds like you did a little bit of that, but based on your feedback here, you could have done 10x more, which would have dramatically increased your success. That's a great learning experience. And
I'll finish, Brandon. Sorry to interrupt with, I walked away from that experience having a much better understanding and respect for small business owners, people who out of thin air create a business with repeatable business, with a market that adores the product that they're offering and the service that they're giving. And the respect level I gained during that period of my career is immense.
I love that. That's awesome. And I'm sure it's something that you're applying now to ServiceNow. But before we get into ServiceNow, okay, so the Ticketmaster, the City Search, what's the next big thing that you do? I know that you were at Gaffey and Associates, as a sales director for 5 to 6 years. Like, what were you? So, what is Gaffey and Associates, or Gaffey Healthcare? What made you decide to leave the Ticketmaster thing?
Yeah, the Ticketmaster thing morphed into getting recruited for a company called Vertical Networks, which later morphed into vertical communications. That was my first jaunt into the sales development / inside sales world.
Okay.
And I started there kind of in an SDR role. And every time I would get off the phone, or every time I would hear one of my colleagues get off the phone, if they were running into the same issue with, not getting a response to their voicemails, or just, having a tough time in the conversation articulating our offering, I would actually share some insights like, hey, I think if you just make this tweak or that tweak, it's probably going to help you go from X to Y. And I would do that on a regular basis to the point where I got promoted and got to lead that team. And that was my first experience into telecommunications and data networking. So I started to learn the underbelly of technology and what really drives the tools that we even use today.
So that was like going from like door-to-door sales to then going to like selling hardware and telco over the phone. Was that a hard transition? How did you transition so easily?
Yeah, well, I can't say it was easy, but it was taking the experiences that we just talked about from the door-to-door. And okay, I understand that if someone picks up the phone, I have a minuscule amount of time to add value and earn another 30 seconds or another minute. And so my preparation got game tight. And I really started focusing on different scenarios that might happen should someone pick up the phone. I started to zero out so that I would speak to a human being instead of always having to leave a voicemail. I started leaving voicemails saying, hey, look, Brandon, no need to call me back. I'll find you at a certain spot this week when it makes sense for you to have a conversation. Stuff that was a little less invasive, but I got more out of it.
That's awesome.
And it was also a great experience to learn the data networking telecom world, as I started to mention, and technology. And also it was a very channel oriented sale. So I got to learn about value added resellers and the channel space.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All my VCs tell me channel's like the biggest opportunity for us, and I know nothing about it. So
it's huge. It's huge. It's a very underrated channel, so to speak. Pardon the pun, of selling your offering. So understanding the channel and partner ecosystem, that was a critical experience for me, which kind of drove me into the Gaffey and Associates opportunity.
And at Vertical Networks, Vertical Communications, that was the first time you were in sales development, selling over the phone. You said data and making these micro changes in sales development helped you get promoted to like a sales manager. How did you know, like, what were some of the things you recognized needed to be changed? Like, not a lot. There's a lot of salespeople out there, and I've been one of them. That's like, hey, this is the script. I can't change it. I got to stick with it forever, and I'm just going to keep doing it, even if I get the door slammed. I just got to make more calls. How did you develop that intuition? Like, no, we should make changes in data and all that jazz.
Sure. Well, once you realize what's not working, it prompts you to want to fix it and try to find where are the gaps that we need to fill. And it was, again, very fundamental stuff, fumbling all over your words when that call point picks up the phone, not being prepared. If you are in the midst of a conversation, maybe you don't understand that there's an opportunity for you to talk about how our partner ecosystem might be able to complement the effort. And here's what we would like to do next. And instead of, hey, do you have 5 minutes? We would ask, is it best to speak, tomorrow morning at 10 or Thursday afternoon at 2? Unless now works for you, it's probably going to take about 6 to 7 minutes. And here's the purpose of our call, et cetera. So once I would find those gaps and find solutions that would actually work, I would share that information. I wouldn't keep it close to the vest. I would hold a brown bag session on a Thursday afternoon and invite people from
Oh my gosh, the brown bag. I remember doing brown bags when I was at IBM. I totally forgot about brown bags. That's hilarious.
People come into the conference room, you've got pizza for them, and you talk to your boss and have, get the approval prior, and people come in and you go, look, I'm just sharing some insights that I have learned over the last 2 weeks of listening to people on the phone and kind of running into barriers myself. And when you start doing that, you're noticed. All of a sudden, your reputation precedes you, and you become indispensable to that company and to that organization, and they need you more than you need them. And what comes from that are promotions, recognitions,
Awesome.
Salary increases, equity, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was the ticket for me then to get that promotion I just started sharing my work and sharing the solutions that I knew were going to work, and basically helping others, Brandon.
Even on your team, like helping
Yeah.
people on your team, like you didn't care that they could like move up in the sales rankings against you.
Good on them if they do. Maybe I need to be better then. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people have a hard time differentiating the difference between being on a team and being a team. You got to help each other out and have each other's back. If you and I were working together and we were, we were responsible for driving the quota of our team, and I already made my quota for the quarter, yeah, I could totally ignore you and watch you fall on your face. Or I could say, hey, Brandon, I might be able to help you out, man. I think you probably need to fix A and B, and you're good to go, man. I mean, you're not going to forget that.
No, I love that. How do and it's going to take us off topic, but how do you create that team? I'm a team player. I have all of our team members record and share everything here at Seamless. Like, because even me, I again, just because I got my ass kicked really bad, my second company, I don't know anything. I'm trying to learn from everyone I work with. I don't care if you're an SDR, AE, COO, CFO, what I'm trying to learn as much as possible from everyone, and I try to create that team culture. It sounds like you've been really successful. What's the best piece of advice to create that helping sales culture?
Keep your ego at the door when you walk in. Start facing outward and thinking of other people versus yourself. And that includes your colleagues and peers. Number 2, raise your standards, especially if you're the leader on the team. Frankly, we can go this route too. Everybody on the team is a leader. You need to act as if everybody on the team gets hit by a bus, God forbid, and you need to walk in and you need to pick up where everyone left off and carry the torch and lead the team forward. Act like that, which leads to number 3, which is lead by example.
Yeah.
Lead by example. Be good to people. It pays in spades. Plus, it goes back to what you and I were talking about at the beginning of this call. When you take care of people, your intent, I hope, is for them to pay it forward so that a generation goes by, and some of the good work I did 23, 24 years ago, people have benefited from and have helped the teams behind them, which in turn makes all of us look great and does the world good, if you want to go even that far.
Yeah, no, I love that. It sounds like you're a big believer in servant leadership and legacy leadership, which I am. And the minute that I, personally was focused on, hey, we want to positively impact 1 billion people and we want to help 1 billion maximize their wealth, health, and potential. Got my whole team around it. Like, nothing stands in your way when you've got that servant, that legacy leadership. I think it's hard for people to develop, to focus less on the commission. Like, the commissions will come if you're a servant to the customer and you're a servant to your team.
Absolutely. If you really want to focus on the money and that's really the driver, all I would ask is that you just go a layer behind that. So let's say you've got all the money. Now what? What are you going to do with the money? And if people are like, oh, I just want to buy a killer car or a helicopter, or I don't want to work anymore, I'm cautious about those folks. If they want to start a nonprofit or want to build more businesses and provide more employment opportunities for people to better the community, now we're talking. Now that's your mission then. That's your purpose.
Yeah. Eventually you'll start to get sick of the money. I've made millions, and the funny part is when I made the most was when I worked the most, to help other people, because making the money, the Lambo won't keep you happy forever.
Nope.
And it's a small, high depreciating mission and goal. Okay, cool. So we're getting off topic, but we're going to get back on. So you're selling for Gaffey.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
Gaffey.
Walk me through Gaffey, Elsevier, Inside View, Achievers. I want to talk about, out of all of these places that you worked at, quickly the sales successes and failures / learning opportunities that you learned at each of these, and then that will lead us into our top sales question. your sales secret to sales success. But go ahead, Gaffey.
So Gaffey and Associates was a company founded and run by a family member of mine. And I was recruited into that company as well after being successful at Vertical Networks, and was recruited to run sales for that organization. And it was a new vertical altogether it was selling to and servicing the healthcare industry, namely patient financial services organizations within healthcare systems. So tons of learning experiences because it was a whole new vertical to learn all the components of successful healthcare organizations. And
that's something that you didn't do before. That's like a whole, first you did logistics, then you did, the Yelp, the city search, then you did the telco and the hardware. Now you're moving on to healthcare.
Yeah. Moving on to healthcare and, different executives that I'm talking to with different problems, selling a software solution, which was, it was on-prem at first, and then we moved into the cloud. So the whole concept of going from on-prem to the cloud was new. And so I had to learn that as well. So it's just, there's a multitude of learning experiences.
Were you like scared? I mean, I know you said that a family member brought you into this company, but like, I know some healthcare companies or any company, they won't hire you if you don't have experience in the vertical. And here you are joining this company, brand new vertical, brand new personas, never did healthcare before. Like, how did you fight through that?
Yeah, so I don't think scared is the right word, but it means a lot to me. It's just the way I think I'm made, that whether it's a family member or not that I'm working for, my aim is often to make them look fabulous. I want them to look good, and I don't want to let anyone down. And so I hold myself accountable for my own learning experience and development experience. It's like I work harder on myself than I do on my job. And I also feel that, I need to get to a point in my career, in all different milestones of my career, where I have to hustle so much I don't have to introduce myself anymore, where my reputation precedes me and people know who I am because of my good work. And the phone rings when that happens, when you approach your career that way. Opportunities multiply around you.
And you've done a good job of that, because now you're everywhere. But okay, so the healthcare, Gaffey Healthcare, you dive in, you try to better yourself to learn the industry and the personas. Like, what was your biggest sales success there, or like sales takeaway strategy, right? Your sales strategy there that you took, and like you're like, I'll never forget this thing, this change that I made, and then the sales failure or learning experience.
Ooh, that's a good one. I started traveling a lot at Gaffey. And I think the biggest sales success lesson I learned was that's a whole other facet of selling, is when you're on the road. You have to account for change in time zones, change in region and weather, different cultures, even within our beloved United States. It's different in different parts of the country, and you have to adapt and accommodate the culture that you're going into. If you're from the Bay Area in, San Francisco, and you're going to Boston, Massachusetts, it's different. It's a different location. It's a different way they treat people and approach business. And you have to be able to be flexible and aware enough of the environment you are now in if you cross country to do selling. And you have to accommodate the way they live and work. That was a huge learning experience for me to figure out.
Were you on the road? Like, how much were you on the road there?
I did a lot of travel, probably between 50 and 60%, which is a lot for me when at the time I had a really young family. So there was a lot of time away from the family and going across country all the time and just being there for 2 weeks at a time. You've got to be in shape. You got to be eating right.
I was just about to say, I remember when I used to travel all the time for IBM, actually from Ohio and New York to San Francisco, like every week, man, I was just eating so bad. You got to eat healthy. You got to keep working out. Yeah, that's some great advice.
When you're on a plane across the country or even across the globe, how are you using that time? Are you reading and expanding your mind in terms of the industry that you're selling to and the product you're selling, and what might be a critical business issue to the people you're about to speak to the following day? Or are you like watching 5 movies and chilling and drinking beers?
Gosh.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I haven't done any of that on a plane in a lot. Like, it's funny. I keep forgetting, like, that's how people do things. Yeah. Like, skill up when you're flying, skill up when you're traveling.
totally. Anyway, so
Oh,
it
the
was,
relationship wise, just curious, because this is interesting. Because
yep.
for those out there that are salespeople that are traveling a lot, do you have any good relationship advice? Because guys like you and me, when we're traveling and we're zoned in, like when I'm on the road, I'm so zoned in on the deal, the customer, the opportunity. It's hard for me to remember, oh yeah, I've got my wife, I've got my family at home. Like, how did you make sure that they knew, that you maximize your relationship with the family, even though you were traveling a lot?
Sure. Well, you have to be like this with your significant other in terms of what the family's mission is and how each of you plays a part in accomplishing the mission. And in my wife, I have a great comrade and teammate who understands, hey, look, this is the gig, and this is what the gig entails, and she supports me 100%, to this day, in everything that I'm doing when it comes to my work, because when you circle back, it actually helps the family thrive and grow. And so, time management is critical, making sure that when I am home, that I am literally carving out and scheduling time that I'm going to be with my family. And when I'm with them, I'm 100% present to them. I'm not thinking about work or tapping away on the damn phone. I'm focused on my children and on my wife and on the people around me that matter most, because I actually need them as well to be my best when I do get back to work.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm gonna need your advice. I'm the one. I'm really bad at the whole like not doing work when you're at home guy. Now
Mm.
I don't have a family yet. Luckily, my fiance sounds very much like your wife. Like we're all in on positively impacting a billion people. But you could probably write a book on how you work so hard and keep when you're at home, you're giving it all to your family, and when you're at work, you're giving it all to your work. That's
You
incredible.
just gave me a good idea. I may do that.
Yeah, there you go, man. So, okay. So now we've got, you learn a lot from that experience.
Yeah.
What was the biggest failure slash, ass kicking like lesson from Gaffey Healthcare?
Um, Man, again, this is on the fly and off the lid, and I'm just trying to think of what was a failure. That's really tough, Brandon. It was a great experience working there.
Yeah, so it sounds like it must have
Really
been like
solid.
everything that you learned the years prior helped you have like a really great run
Yeah, and
at Gaffey.
it's interesting. Pardon the interruption, but when I start thinking about failures, they're just, to me, they're not necessarily failures. I think I'm just naming them wrong. They're more just insane learning experiences, because
Yeah.
as I grow in my career and I look back, like I said, on 25 years of selling, every single company I worked for was it was a gift. It was a gift to me. I worked for some really tough people, and I worked for some great people. And at the time, those tough people I thought were real pains in the ass. And I had didn't feel great about them. But in retrospect, I look back and I understand the job they were doing. They could have done it a little better in terms of their tone and their approach, but I appreciate what I learned from them. I don't take any of it for granted. I think they're all just great learning experiences. The
That's
Gaffey
awesome.
experience morphed into Elsevier, which is an awesome publishing company. And I
Yep.
want to say that company is about 500 years old.
Yeah, it's a
It
huge
too
company.
was a family company that started in the Netherlands and basically evolved into a science, technology, and medical publishing company for all the major universities across the globe. And I had the opportunity to sell one of their first software applications to universities
Nice.
and biotech companies and build a team around that product line and sell worldwide. It was phenomenal. I moved my family from the San Francisco Bay Area to San Diego, where the role was based, and I built a small global team, and I traveled
San
70.
Diego sounds awesome.
Oh, San Diego is one of the greatest places on the planet, frankly. But I traveled a good 75% plus of the time, and that did not last long. That really war on the family and the family life. So I remember coming home from like a 10-day trip to China, and I rolled in on a Sunday morning, and my wife was like, dude, what are you doing? You're never here. We all moved to San Diego, and you're missing all the soccer games and the birthday parties, and you're constantly on the road. And I knew that the best way to resolve that was to leave, unfortunately, to leave that company, but also to recognize that most of my network was in the Bay Area, which meant we would have to also leave San Diego and go back home.
Got it.
I tapped the network and stumbled across an awesome opportunity at Inside View, which got me into that space. And I built and led their
And
sales development
they do a lot of data. So like I'm on a mission to build the world's best sales leads platform. That's crazy that, you were at an Inside View for almost 3 years.
Yeah.
How was it? Me personally, I'm selfish because I want to learn what was your biggest sales success there and your biggest lesson, because they're big in the data space.
Yeah.
Tell me about you. So you went there to manage their sales dev team?
Yes, I built upon a very small sales development team that did inbound plus outbound in the data and intelligence space. So I learned a lot about intelligence and insights and data. I learned about working for a startup. I learned about really making a name for yourself as a company, brand, offering in the very competitive, aggressive B2B tech world. I learned more and more about the nuances and details of selling mechanics and understanding, because we sold mostly to heads of sales, understanding not only how data, intelligence, and insights can inform their sales cycle, but also have a better understanding of the multitude of methodologies that are used by different companies, whether it be spin selling, you mentioned the challenger sale, solution selling, customer-centric selling, it goes on and on.
So many different options,
Miller Hyman, Sandler, there's so many different methodologies out there, but at least having an understanding of what makes these heads of sales tick when they're running their organizations and building them, and being able to help their effort and complement their effort. That was a tremendous learning experience. And I would say, to answer your question about, my biggest sales success at Inside View is watching with excitement what has become of that team that I built several years ago, watching them go on to lead their own teams, start their own businesses, be successful individual contributors, go do their thing. That's just been a thrill to watch.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so
awesome.
The biggest success was like learning all these different sales strategies and then applying it to connect with these B2B sales leaders.
Yes.
You think that was like the biggest takeaway?
Yeah, that was the biggest, that was one of the biggest takeaways. And there's an outward facing lesson where you're learning about the marketplace you're selling to and all the nuances of that marketplace.
Yep.
But then there's an inward learning experience, an internal, where you're learning about, Inside View evolving as a company in itself, getting capital, going through Series C, Series D, so on and so forth, teeing yourself up for that big catalyst event, whether it's going to be an IPO or an acquisition, or you're going to choose to go private equity, or you're going to acquire a company. Getting an understanding of how that whole thing works is an incredible lesson in itself.
Yeah, it's a lot to deal with there. And then, you said you created the inbound. Did you have inbound and outbound separated there, or did reps do both? Right now, we do both.
It was
my SDRs do both. I'm thinking about having them separated.
We did both. We had the inbound team, we called our lead qualification team. So they had to show marketing a return on its investment in all the leads that it was pouring into the top of the funnel. We had to make sure that we had a very clear understanding of how marketing automation works and how it informs the CRM and how quickly you need to follow up with leads and cadences and talk tracks and all that in terms of qualifying leads. And then we had the outbound team, a little more of a seasoned team, focused on alignment and assignment with different segments and reps within those segments and even product lines, and strategizing on accounts and strategizing on contacts within those target accounts. and, running plays against those key accounts to get them in the door and to do business with them. So
That's
we built
great.
a playbook at the time to help both teams, inbound and outbound, do their jobs great.
Awesome. And I know so then you moved on to Achievers, and now you're at ServiceNow. And just for the sake of time, what were some big sales lessons, learning experiences that you had as, director or senior director of sales development and VP over at Achievers, and now you're the senior director of global sales development over at ServiceNow?
Yep, great. Being mindful of time, I would say what's been most important in both experiences is being able to connect the dots within the organization. Achievers was a great example as we were teeing ourselves up to ultimately get acquired, which happened. We got acquired by Blackhawk Network.
I saw that. That's
so
awesome.
Being able to show the acquiring company that you have your act together, that they could pick up the playbook, if you will, and say, oh, I see exactly how they were running the business. I see exactly how they were driving repeatable, predictable pipeline that led to repeatable, predictable revenue. Here's what they did. Here's the checklist. And now moving into sales development at ServiceNow, this company is evolving lickety split.
And Achievers is an employee engagement platform.
That's right. So it was the HR space, correct?
Yeah, the HR space. And then ServiceNow, tell us about what ServiceNow does, and then what you've learned, big learning experience from there for salespeople.
Sure. ServiceNow is in the enterprise service management space. Started out specifically helping IT teams manage problems, incidents, and changes that they need to make in their IT organizations. And our platform helped streamline their workflow so well that we started to evolve into different business units across the enterprise, helping HR teams, helping security operations teams, customer service management teams, and others streamline their day-to-day workflows. So the learning experience with ServiceNow is that, we have only expanded by BU, by product offering, by region, by geolocation, and being able to help companies connect the dots within their own organizations has been a tremendous learning experience, because ultimately a lot of sales development teams are the first impression to these prospective companies, and we need to teach and coach them what that narrative is all about so that businesses get it very quickly.
That's awesome. And then who do you compete with? Is this like you compete with Atlassian and Jira, or is this like...
Good question. This is not a cliche, I promise, Brandon, but our biggest competitor is really companies that are, quote, doing it themselves.
Internally.
People who are using a multitude of disparate systems
across IT, security, HR, and customer service, and you're trying to say, hey, there's a new way to bring it all in. And
exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So is sales a lot of education then?
It is. Yeah. There's a lot of evangelization and a lot of education, but more than anything, it's really just, it's helping prospects uncover pain that they don't even know they have. So we talked about solution selling. In solution selling, they call that latent pain. A lot of times the prospects, they don't even know that they're experiencing pain until you tease it out and show them. And they're like, oh, wow, we could be doing that way better.
Awesome.
So that's what we're helping them do.
And then you've been there for a few years now, 3 years, a little over 3 years. Congrats. Yeah. Biggest sales lesson at ServiceNow.
Oh, wow. Biggest sales lesson. Probably it's been a great world experience for me. So a great lesson is just understanding that everybody learns differently and absorbs information differently based on their culture, based on where they live, et cetera. And so you have to understand that, you have to find very quickly how they learn best. And that's how you have to teach and coach.
Because it's a massive company, 8,420 employees on LinkedIn today, right now.
That's right.
Could be less or more. I mean, it's a lot of people to have to work with.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's
how
just
big's the sales team?
That's not the marketplace we're selling to.
Right.
So my team, the global sales development team, we're just shy of 200 people, and we maintain a ratio of, one sales development rep to upwards of 6 account executives at one time. So you do the math, and it's a
Wow.
pretty big organization.
1 to 6. That's incredible. And the SDRs just generating that many opportunities, or the AE just can't handle that many opportunities?
Well, the AE can handle the opportunities, but all of us are pipeline contributors. But obviously the AEs, their primary focus is on the revenue that they're generating, and we account for about a third to a little over a third of the pipeline that's being generated by the company. And we do that by way of rigorous qualification around the meetings that we're booking. To date, we've booked just over 18,000 meetings for this organization,
Wow.
which yielded about 600 million or so in
Damn.
revenue pipeline.
That's incredible, which is perfect. Leads up to sales secrets from the top 1%. The world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Ralph Barsi, you are a tenured, from selling newspaper and collecting the checks himself to UPS to, Ticketmaster to Elsevier. I mean, across the board, ServiceNow now, and I mean, dude, to Gaffey Healthcare, like you've sold everything, you've done everything. If you could go back in time to when you first started in sales, and you had to share to yourself that top sales secret, or you just hired a new sales development rep on the team over there at ServiceNow, or your son is interested, one of your sons interested in going into sales, and you could only give him one sales secret. Again, this is no prep, by the way. Ralph just said he had a quick opening, so he hasn't had a lot of time to think about this, but what would your top sales secret be?
Develop an attitude of gratitude.
Develop an attitude of gratitude. It seems like that's something that you've expressed like throughout your whole career. Yeah, what is the attitude of gratitude? What do you mean by that?
So it runs the gamut in terms of the opportunities and experiences that I have had in my career to date. And so being aware of the goodness along the way that I've picked up and run with is critical. And then being able to share those insights and experiences and nuggets. We call them the failures, we call them the learning experiences, we call them the successes, sharing those experiences with others and leaving behind a trail of breadcrumbs for people to learn from is crucial to the future of our sales profession. So develop an attitude of gratitude along the way for the people that you don't like, that you meet in your career, to the people that you love and embrace. They all bring gifts in different shapes, sizes, and colors and forms, and you have to be looking for them and learning from them in order to move the collective effort forward. So develop an attitude of gratitude. Take a sip of water and be grateful for having a fresh glass of water, where there are communities on this planet that don't even have running water going through their communities. So just be grateful for all that you have. You're watching Brandon and me on a webinar right now with your cool laptop that you probably didn't even pay for. You know what I mean? And it's high def, it's high quality audio. And hey, man.
Yeah, or now you're watching it on your mobile phone while at the gym or traveling.
Yeah,
like,
you're
damn.
doing great. You're doing great. So maybe that's a sign and a signal that you need to start giving back a little bit more than you do, and making more of a contribution to the ecosystem that we work in. Develop an attitude of gratitude.
That's amazing. And just quickly, because this has been a game changer, developing an attitude of gratitude for me personally, professionally, especially on my mission to be a servant leader like Ralph taught us to try to be, and develop that legacy leadership and that servant leadership. One of the key things that allowed me and empowered me to do that was when I realized, like, I'm not competing with anyone, I'm just competing with myself. That helped me really realize, like, everyone I come in contact with has something special. My family also brought me up that way. Don't judge other people. Don't call names on other people. Like, everyone's here because they've got something special on this earth to add and contribute. So luckily, I was blessed with the right parents that pounded that into me at an early age. But for those of us that feel like the world is against us in sales and we're competing with all of our teammates and people in the industry and thought leaders, like, what is your recommendation for people to just like take a step back and just try to develop an attitude of gratitude? Like, where would you recommend? I'm a new aggressive sales rep on Ralph's team at ServiceNow. I don't like, I compete with everyone. I don't want to take advice. I think I know everything. Like, what would be your advice so that I start developing that attitude of gratitude?
Yeah, stop thinking about yourself, because everything you just said, it's all about you, man. It's all about you. You don't want to listen to anybody. You've got your opinions and your mission, and I get that. We talked about the ambition and the goodness of that earlier, but have a beginner's mindset. Learn things as if you are required to teach what you're learning the very next day to someone, and you're going to start to open up your eyes and your ears a little more. You're going to take better notes. You're going to get a true understanding of what it is that you're learning before you form any opinions on it. And also know that as you progress in your career, as we would say in martial arts, your belt will be tested. So if you are a black belt in sales, be ready to be tested. As you grow teams, for example, you're going to always have haters and naysayers on your team that aren't down with your approach. They're not down with your personality or the way you do things. Look for what gift it is that they're bringing to the table, even though that's tough to digest sometimes and process, especially when you have a good intent to help and develop everybody that works in your organization. Just be prepared to be tested at every stop.
Wow, that's incredible, man. This was a deep secret. Develop an attitude of gratitude. I absolutely love it. Ralph, I know you exude this sales secret throughout your career, and probably why everyone that engages with you really appreciates you and learns a lot from you, just like I have throughout my sales career. And for those of the listeners here, Ralph, that want to connect with you, learn from you, subscribe to you, follow you, where can they go today?
Well, thank you for having me, Brandon. I learned from you as well, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your audience. You can find me on LinkedIn under Ralph Barsi. It's RALPH, not RALF, BARSI. On Twitter, I'm rbarsi. I have my own blog. It's, guess what, ralphbarsi.com. And that's where you can find me. You can email me directly too at rbarsi@gmail.com if you want.
Amazing. Well, Ralph, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise and knowledge that you've learned in sales throughout your career, and your top sales secret: develop an attitude of gratitude. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Order a copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com, secretsalesbook.com.